Good evening. This is the news from Ostankino television. First, the day's events in brief. The results of the recent Congress are being discussed today by representatives of the government and political parties. The President's administration will create a strong system of support for holding the referendum. The Russian government has prepared a program to stimulate export. Miners in Vorkuta and Kuzbas have cancelled the strike planned for tomorrow. In Azerbaijan, the situation has worsened. Early parliamentary elections are possible. In Tajikistan, it's a day of mourning over the death of the leader of the Popular Front, Mr. Safarov. The Security Council has extended the mandate of UN forces in former Yugoslavia for 3 months. One of the main decisions adopted today by the Russian cabinet was the approval of a program to increase export, which should make our foreign trade operations more attractive to Russian companies. The session of the Presidium of the Russian government was held today under the chairmanship of Viktor Chernomyrdin. Among the top priority issues was the state program to stimulate exports. According to the Minister of Foreign Economic Relations, Sergei Glazyev, by the end of the decade, Russia should be able to increase the volume of export of machines and technology to $15 billion per year. At the government session, the need for Russia's presence in the world arms market was emphasized. Removing Russia from the world arms trade would cause the loss of a large hard currency resources. To raise funds for the program, the government plans to use foreign investment along with funds from the state budget. The members of the government's presidium also considered a draft set of regulations for the ministries of Fuel and Energy and Agriculture and the State Committee on Industrial Policy. 1 year ago, today, the Federation Treaty was signed. The treaty played a noticeable role in enhancing the integrity of the Russian Federation. A press conference was devoted to the event held by the chairman of the Council of Nationalities in the Supreme Soviet, Ramazan Abdullatipov. He emphasized the important creative role which was played by the signing of the Federation Treaty in enhancing Russia's statehood. The preparation of the treaty consolidated the strength of the legislative and executive branches. When we needed a courageous step to move to the final signing of the Federation Treaty, Ruslan Khasbalatov took this step very courageously, and simultaneously Mr. Khasbalatov at that stage made very necessary contact with the President, and the Federation Treaty was signed. Ramazan Abdullatipov said that he met with the President of Russia and found full mutual understanding with Mr. Yeltsin on issues to preserve the integrity and peace of the Russian Federation. Abdullatipov says, however, that support for the Federation Treaty by the President's team is not being transformed into the creation of legal mechanisms. The government and the Supreme Soviet have finally formed working groups which should work together to draft documents for the legal implementation of the Federation Treaty. Yesterday, the representatives of the government and many political forces analyzed the results of the recent Congress of People's Deputies. Today's many press conferences seem to confirm the original evaluation which was made immediately after the Congress. The determining event in the life of the country may be the referendum. The President's Chief of Staff, Sergei Filatov, told reporters today, in his opinion, the opposition thirsts for total victory, and this cannot be permitted. Unfortunately, we are coming away from the Congress without consolidation and without the desire for consolidation. The time is such today that we must deal with the economy, but the whole society is going into politics. He also said that on behalf of the President, steps would be made to create a strong system of support for the vote scheduled April 25th. Filatov believes that in order to dot all the I's on the referendum's question, one thing is missing, the question of the new constitution. He wants the Parliament to support the idea of including this question on the ballot. He said that the President, apart from his earlier scheduled foreign trips, plans to take several trips through Russia in the near future, in which he plans to explain the fundamental principles of his policy. The leader of Russia's Communist Party, which has just been registered and has 600,000 members, told journalists today that President Yeltsin has the support of no more than 10 to 15% of the population. At a meeting with reporters, the leader of the Russian Communist Party, Gennady Zyuganov, called the decision of the recent Congress of People's Deputies a moral and political condemnation of the course of Boris Yeltsin. After what he called the overwhelming defeat of the president's team, the opportunity has arisen to normalize the situation in the country. At the same time, he says that no result in the referendum will be able to solve the political crisis in Russia. However, the communists plan to participate actively in the upcoming campaign. The Communist Party is prepared to work together with movements which share its principles: nationality, justice, statehood, and patriotism. In terms of the prospects of the communist movement in Russia, the fate and character of the party will be determined by its intellectual and programmatic possibilities, which will answer the key questions of state and national development in Russia, issues of security and preserving potential development, etc. In the near future, according to the participants of this press conference, the Communist Party, which was officially registered on March 24th, will be in firm opposition to the president's policies and the government of Chernomyrdin. Today, Oleg Rumyantsev, speaking at a press conference as the representative of the Russian Social Democratic Center, expressed the position of this center on the political situation in the country, characterizing the forces battling for power in Russia as, on the one side, supporters of a communist backlash, and on the other side, pseudo-democratic voluntarists. Rumyantsev called for the creation of a centrist bloc of opponents of fanaticism, the goals of which would be to participate in a coalition government and hold early elections for president and parliament. The president's team intends to appeal to the Constitutional Court over the system of voting in the referendum, which was approved by the Congress, more specifically the system of counting the votes, which is 50% plus one of the total number of voters. The president's side, according to Interfax, believes that the votes should be counted at 50% plus one of the actual voters who participate in the electing, as the president was elected by this system. The president believes this violates the Constitution. If the court changes the system of vote, it would no longer be necessary to hold a nationwide poll in parallel to the referendum. Miners in Kuzbas and Vorkuta will not strike on April 1st. Interfax reports that this coal mining region, unions plan to refocus their activities on the referendum April 25th and will urge miners to vote for the president and against the parliament. In Kyrgyzstan, they are preparing for the scheduled session of the Supreme Soviet, which will consider the draft new constitution on second reading. As in the first stage of debate and now, there is lively discussion over the articles on the distribution of powers and on how to enshrine democratic market reforms. Naturally, many observers raise the possibility that events could develop on the recent Russian scenario. In the forces which oppose the Russian president, Askar Akayev sees a threat to democracy in Kyrgyzstan as well, because in this second stage, these forces will do everything possible in order to restore the former communist totalitarian empire. Our task today is not to permit this communist backlash, because the consequences of this would be very tragic. The defense minister, Pavel Grachov, whose statement on suspending the withdrawal of Russian troops from the Baltic, which he made in Brussels at the session of the foreign ministers of NATO, has arrived in St. Petersburg on an inspection visit. 29 units, which are being withdrawn from the Baltic countries, will come here to Leningrad Military District this year. The trip was somewhat surprising for the commanders of the military district, but a more unexpected event was this: a sealed conveyor with the insignia of the military units to be visited by the minister and the top brass of the military. The conveyor will be opened only before moving to one of the sub-units of the district. This method was chosen to ensure the inspection will be a surprise. As a result of these sudden checks, Pavel Grachov believes the combat readiness of the Russian armed forces will be increased. The second goal, of course, is the most painful issue, which is the withdrawal of forces and providing for them their social protection in terms of providing apartments. In Brussels, you talked about the fact that the withdrawal of troops from the Baltics will be suspended. Is this true? My statement was distorted here. In fact, a presidential directive suspending the withdrawal of forces has existed for a long time. This is related to the fact that the Latvian and Estonian sides do not want to sit down at the negotiating table to decide the conditions for withdrawal in a civilized way, the financial aspects and helping the withdrawal. In Lithuania, the withdrawal will proceed, but we will withdraw from Latvia and Estonia only after an agreement is signed. The statement by Pavel Grachov caused concern not only in Latvia and Estonia, but also in Lithuania. The tone of the comments is like this: does the unsigned political agreement annul the other agreements, including those signed by the defense ministers, which approve the schedule for withdrawal? The Baltic countries are waiting for an official explanation from the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In Tajikistan, today is a day of mourning over the death of the leader of the Popular Front, Sangak Safarov, and the well-known field commander Faiz Ali Saidov, who brought the current leadership of Tajikistan to power. Representatives of the government, including the chairman of the parliament, Rakhmonov, participated in the memorial service today. The investigation is trying to determine the cause of these tragic events. The statement of the Presidium of the Supreme Soviet says it is the result of a search for enemies of the people, an attempt to destabilize the political situation and cause a schism in the national unity. Both of these leaders were unique in many ways. During the Tajik War, they had many opponents, but also even more supporters. They distinguished themselves by defending the peaceful population of the Republic. Recently, Sangak Safarov made great efforts to return Tajik refugees from Afghanistan. In his last interview, which he gave to Ostankino television only several hours before his death, he said, "We are internationalists. We always have been and always will be. Therefore, those refugees who are now in Afghanistan, I believe they understand that we favor friendship with all peoples, that at any time we will welcome them home because they are our people, our blood. We are ready at any time to create for them the necessary conditions of life so they will not think that someone is trying to oppress them, that someone is trying to avenge them for some relatives who have been killed. This is impossible. In order to prevent possible provocations and destabilization in the political situation in Khatlon province of Tajikistan, a curfew and state of emergency have been introduced. And in the capital of the Republic, Dushanbe, increased measures are being taken to guarantee public order. One of the results of the visit by Russian Foreign Minister Andrei Kozyrov to Tehran, which ended yesterday, was an agreement by the top officials of Iran not to interfere in the internal affairs of Tajikistan. The reason for this discussion was information which appeared on the planned activization of anti-government forces in the spring, who are acting under the green banner of Islam. As a result of the negotiations, Muslim internationalism in Iran's official policies will be limited by 2 articles of a document which prohibits state support for terrorist and extremist groups. In this way, the leaders in Dushanbe have a chance to change the spirit of the situation. The fragile balance between the conflicting forces will not be violated, at least by Iran. We managed to agree here not to shake up the situation, to support the legally elected and existing government, and to get all sides, including the government itself and the opposition and the Muslim opposition, to support national peace. At the same time, Dushanbe has other neighbors in Central Asia who are capable of dealing with the heathen in Tajikistan in the name of the Almighty. The discussion of this topic will be continued by Andrei Kozyrov next week in the capital of Pakistan, Islamabad. Baku. The Minister of Interior Affairs is embroiled in controversy over the beating of an editor of an opposition newspaper and his insulting remarks toward the opposition in a television address, which is increasing the internal tension in the Republic. This tension is being heated also by the success of Armenian troops. According to the leader of the influential opposition party, Milisti Glav, Tibar Mamedov, as a result of negotiations with the president Abelfaz Ucebi, they have reached agreement to accept several demands which were to be made at a mass meeting. Among the reasons which led the opposition to decide not to hold the meeting is the worsening situation at the front. As of today, 12 villages of Kilbagersk region in Azerbaijan have been seized as a result of a large-scale attack by Armenian forces from Vardansk region in neighboring Nagorno-Karabakh. 30 more villages in the entire northern part of Lachinsk region have been cut off. Tens of thousands of people are surrounded. According to the Republican Defense Ministry, there is no way to evacuate the population because Armenian forces are continuing to move toward the regional center of Kilbajari. Experts believe the enemy is trying to establish another corridor from Armenia to Nagorno-Karabakh. In Baku, the meeting was not held, but in Tbilisi it was. Supporters of Zviad Gamsakhordia held a sanctioned meeting there. On the second anniversary of the referendum on Georgian independence, several hundred gathered on one square of the city, advocating a return to power by Gamsakhordia, who turns 54 today. The ousted president is in exile in the Chechen capital of Grozny as the personal guest of his friend Jakhar Dudayev. Beginning tomorrow, the prices of Vaz cars will increase by about 30%. The least expensive, the Model K, has crossed the million threshold and will now cost about 1,100,000 rubles. The number 5 model will approach 2 million in price, the number 9, 4 million, and the Model 99 will cost 5,360,000 rubles. And these are the manufacturer's suggested prices without dealer's markup. The Ilyushin Design Bureau, led by chief designer Genrikh Novozhilov and the Voronezh Production Association, today showed specialists the new wide-body long-distance aircraft EL-96M. Created through cooperation between Russian and American aircraft builders, the new EL can fly with 380 passengers over a distance of 11,000 kilometers without refueling. It does this with the help of Pratt Whitney engines using the newest electronic equipment from the American company Collins. 16 other foreign companies participated in the creation of the new plane. The EL-96M can compete on all commercial and technical indicators with foreign analogs, many of which are still in the design stage. Genrikh Novozhilov's Design Bureau has received orders for 30 aircraft from the airlines in the CIS countries. According to Rockwell, many airlines in the world will buy the EL-96M as well. Scandinavians love to tease each other. One joke in Norway goes like this: Norsk torsk, which means a Norwegian is like a cod. However, cod in Norway is not always Norwegian these days. They say that here at the fish market in Oslo everything is okay, but in other places it is known that Norwegian fishermen are trading for cod caught by Russian fishermen. Our fishermen often trade cod for less valuable herring and other fish. For a ton of cod they can get 5 or 6 tons of herring, which they then take home. Cod is a hard currency fish, and it can be sold on shore or at sea from ship to ship. The official Russian export to Norway is 70,000 tons of cod per year, but in fact it's 1.5 times more, almost 100,000 tons, due to this so-called black market sale that is off the books. Our prices are so low, however, that local fishermen simply can't compete. They are guaranteed to lose from this practice. So it seems that what's good for the Russian is death for the Norwegian. Well, the newspapers write about a cod war with Russia. The province of Filmaker, near the Oslo Peninsula, a new fishing processing industry has sprung up to handle the Russian fish. In Moscow, on currency trading, the rate of the German mark has dropped a bit to 420 rubles. Last week, 1 ruble more was offered for the mark. Having overcome endless barriers in this fiscal year, from a feudal tax policy to deficit in payment balances and inflation, few of the 25 commercial banks in Belarusia are still in good health. One of the youngest has found a way to survive, however. It's the Prior Bank, which has even gotten into first place. At the stockholders' meeting, its founders, who include the largest industrial enterprises of the Republic, named as the reasons for success a correct determination of priorities, generous credits to high-potential producers, which allowed them to increase their charter fund by 10 times and their annual hard currency income by 13%. This financial victory and cooperation with 35 banks in the world does not let Priority Bank and its shareholders close their eyes to the remaining problems. They can solve these problems only by the creation of an economic union with Russia, they believe. We're in a paradoxical situation. Prior Bank is known and has a good image in Western Europe and America, but is virtually unknown to banks in our neighboring countries. Today we have close correspondent relationships with Germany with 9 banks, but in Russia we have only one semi-legal account. Therefore our main task, of course, which we're thinking about today, is opening Russia. Specialists believe that when the new law takes effect, the flow of our citizens abroad on private and business trips will significantly increase, which will be promoted by easier procedures to get a foreign travel passport. Now it is enough to fill out a form, provide 4 photographs and pay the fee, and the employees of the Department of Visas and Registration in the Interior Agency in the place of your residence will issue you a passport within 1 month. An exit visa is no longer required, which is the main factor increasing the demand for these new documents and increasing the workload of the Department of Visas and Registration. The passport is valid for 5 years. Having received his passport, any citizen has the right to go to any embassy, the embassy of the country he wants to visit, in order to get an entry visa. Yes, with the former socialist countries, a citizen with our passport does not need to go to the embassy because we have non-visa entry policies. Andrei Kozyrov, in a meeting with reporters today, confirmed that neither the time nor the place of the Russian-American summit will be changed. The presidents of Russia and the U.S. will meet in Canada, in Vancouver, on April 3rd and 4th. Today, at a special session of the Lithuanian Parliament, there was a debate on the draft program on foreign policy presented by the new government. The main aspect of this is confirming the republic's independence. It was emphasized that Lithuania has no enemies and no territorial claims. They desire good relations with all neighbors on the basis of mutual interests. By decree, the parliament approved the program of Prime Minister Šleževičius. After this, there was a ceremony for the oath of office by the 6th government of the Lithuanian Republic since the restoration of independence. At one time, during large political events on this square, portraits of the leaders of the world proletariat were displayed. Today, only red flags are out, a symbol not so much of changing traditions as of the importance of the events occurring today in the building across the square. Today, the Chinese parliament finishes its work. In the stormy sea of the market economy, the Chinese ship has a new captain chosen at this session. The new president is Jiang Zemin, the 67-year-old engineer and politician who will combine his new job with the duties of General Secretary of the Chinese Communist Party. The new vice president, Zhong Jin, is 10 years older than the president. He's called a red capitalist. This is not a political label, but a precise name of his social status. He was an industrialist who has come through all the stages of Chinese socialism without losing either his position or his capital. These and other key figures in the Chinese leadership are called upon to lead the Chinese state for 5 years, where the government includes both pure and not pure figures from the point of view of orthodox communism. The stormy sea of the market economy, the nearest port is socialism with a Chinese specific, as it's called here. The implementation of this market course will require the labor of 1 billion people, however, and the nation, it seems, is prepared. Today was the end of the official visit to Prague by Slovakian President Michal Kovic. It's the first visit in the brief history of the two countries which emerged after the division of Czechoslovakia, and was the first visit to the Czech Republic by a foreign head of state. It sounds strange, but all the honors of protocol for the distinguished guest were carefully observed, including the performance of the national anthem of both countries, which until recently were two halves of the single song. The essence of the meeting is not protocol, however, but in order to resolve the complex problems in relations between the Czech Republic and Slovakia, and to solve property disputes among them and resolve border issues. They managed to make long-awaited progress here, signing an intergovernmental agreement on organizing border crossings and open movement for Czech and Slovak citizens. They will create joint customs posts in order to allow Bratislava and Prague to save money and keep good neighborly relations. President Václav Havel said that the Czech Republic has no desire to rebuild an iron curtain between the two republics. President Michal Kovic, who is one of the most popular Slovakian politicians today, emphasized the need to develop close relations and that this is in the vital interests of both countries. The Security Council has extended the UN mandate in former Yugoslavia by 3 months. This is because of the violation of ceasefire obligations. Today in Sarajevo, the special representative of the Russian President, Vitaly Churkin, held negotiations with the President of the Serbian Republic of Bosnia-Herzegovina, Radovan Karadzic. They are trying to resolve the conflict in the Republic. Russia needs American help to build housing for military personnel. U.S. Secretary of State Warren Christopher said at hearings in the Senate, the demobilization of hundreds of thousands of soldiers as a result of the end of the Cold War and the withdrawal of former Soviet forces from Eastern Europe present large problems for Russia. In general elections in Jamaica, the current Prime Minister of the country, Percival Patterson, was the winner. During the campaign, conflicts occurred among voters, as a result of which 11 people died. Today, the west bank of the Jordan River was blockaded by Israeli troops. Tel Aviv made this decision after the murder of 2 policemen in Israel. It is believed that the attackers got into Israel across the west bank of the Jordan River. Israeli soldiers now have the right to fire on any armed Arab. A concert by the Old Jazz Orchestra directed by Oleg Lundstrom opened in the Jazz Club in Moscow today. Oleg Lundstrom is the patriarch of Russian jazz. His orchestra, which is the world's oldest big band, should be in the Guinness Book of World Records. It is 60 years old. It was created in the 1930s by Lundstrom and Russian musicians in Harbin. It returned home in 1947 to become a sort of school and experimental studio for many jazz musicians. It has been influenced by new trends and playing styles, but Lundstrom and his band remain faithful to mainstream jazz and orchestra music. They have made 15 records with their own interpretations of classic jazz, including elements of musical folklore, and they defend the idea of Russian jazz. Today, Oleg Lundstrom, who is an official People's Artist of Russia, received the top award, the Honorary Doctor of Arts in San Marino. He performed his Jubilee program called Retro today with the immortal melodies of Glenn Miller from the film Sun Valley Serenade and Duke Ellington, along with other music from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Jazz has survived and become the music of the 20th century only because it expresses a large number of human feelings. Jazz is as old as the century and challenged the academic music at the beginning of the 1900s. It rejected Soviet ideology, survived the test of rock and pop, and today remains one of the greatest genres of world art. It is democratic, honest, and international. It lives and develops and supports the spirit of freedom, which is spreading through Russia. The history of Lundstrom's orchestra is the best confirmation of this. If this spirit of freedom can be caught by us, and if it spreads through Russia, I hope you will support it and never lose it. That's all for me at this hour. Good night. Ultrasonic scanners and flexible fiber endoscopes. The Kraft company sells them for rubles. Telephone in Moscow, 231-7220 and 231-7384. All the parts are reliable and flawless. German furniture in your office. From the Engineer Company. Just this quickly and reliably, we can transfer your money from Russia to the CIS countries. Dialogue Optim Company. Good evening. 6 matches were scheduled for today in the European group in the World Soccer Championship. As of now, we have the result of only one game. Ireland beat Northern Ireland 3-0. All the goals were scored in the first half. In this elimination group also includes Latvia and Lithuania. World record holder in the hurdles, Lyudmila Norozhilenko, will probably be disqualified for 4 years for drug use, according to all the wire services today. The test was made at the beginning of February after a competition in France. It produced a positive result, as did a second test. And now the other sports news. The world sprinting champion, Katarina Krab, will compete to keep her title in August in Stuttgart. Accusations of drug abuse against her have been dropped, and she is charged only with improper use of prescription medication. Garry Kasparov and Nigel Short have accepted the proposal of the British publishing company Times Newspapers and the Teleorg company from the Netherlands to hold the World Chess Championship in London in September of this year. The purse will be $2.5 million. The leader of the Patrick Division, Pittsburgh Penguins, have guaranteed their advancement to the round of 8 in the Stanley Cup playoffs, having beaten Ottawa 6-4. Mario Lemieux scored his 57th goal on the season. Rookie Tiam Sela is catching up with the league's best bomber, Alexander Mogilny. He scored his 71st goal against Calgary. Mogilny has 73 goals. The famous American bicyclist Greg LeMond has been in an automobile accident near the Belgian city of Gent. He received a head injury, but fortunately not very serious. Yesterday, the International Hockey League Cup tournament ended, as you know. Moscow Dynamo confirmed their status as the country's best team, a title they have held for several years. This victory by Dynamo is more significant, however, because they represent the capital, whose hockey personnel has been drained by the departure of the best players abroad. But we must give credit this season to the Eastern Division teams, Lada and especially Tractor, who gave Dynamo their toughest fight. The first big loss in the season has been suffered by the soccer players of Italy's Milan team. They have been eliminated from their national championship despite a victory in the semi-final over Rome 1-0. In the first game, the Capitals team won by a bigger margin, 2-0. Jean-Pierre Papin probably feels the worst about this. 1 minute before the end of the game, he failed to score on a penalty kick, and Milan lost the chance to play overtime. The Rookie of the Year in the NBA is Orlando Magic center Shaquille O'Neal. He is young and not always in control of his emotions. I don't know why he attacked NBA star Dennis Rodman of Detroit, but the fight, as you can see, was serious. Orlando won the game. A small computer for big people from the White Wind Company. A union of oil and common sense.